Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal in 1957. So yes, my first Bergman review, of course. Never seen a Bergman film, until this. And this got the Blu-ray here. Got it very, very recently, of course. And yes, I thought it'd be, probably one of the best places to start. It's known to be maybe one of his more accessible films. It's one of his earlier works as well. So I thought it's kind of a perfect place to start. It would have been Wild Strawberries if I had more money at the moment, but because that is actually the same year as well, which is really interesting. Two, of some of his most acclaimed works, and actually some of the most acclaimed films, came out. He made them the same year, written and directed both of them. So really something there, of course. And yes, it was going to be Wild Strawberries. That was the one I thought, I could easily love. Would be the most easiest for me probably to connect to. But I thought this is probably the other one that I would have got. So I picked this up, fairly cheap, and yes, I was kind of nervous about going into this. I really didn't know what to expect, but of course, it is one of the most acclaimed films of all time. Quite a few of his films are persona, let's just say, and it is his most acclaimed work overall. If you take into account, all the polls and stuff, you definitely. Wild Strawberries and stuff, and films like that, many filmmakers' favourite films as well, like Stanley Kubrick, one of his favourites, I believe. And yes, a lot of his films are very, very acclaimed, but I was excited and also quite nervous. So yes, I went into this film, because there's some that really don't like, his films, and this one, I've heard some people say that, they don't like it. So I just went in kind of without any expectations, and of course, yes, just let it unfold in front of me. So the basic plot, of course, I'm not going to get into too much, and stuff. It's a very, very short film, but it's kind of this knight returning from the Crusades. It's kind of set, the Black Death, Black Plague, and everything is surrounding this. It is a fantasy film at times as well, so it's very, very interesting kind of genres and stuff. But yeah, Antonius, of course, played by Max von Sydow, is basically this knight, and yeah, he returns from the Crusades, and he's greeted very early on by Death himself. Now, of course, this has been parodied and stuff. It is part of pop culture. This whole thing of Death actually, talking, to the character, of course, and it's a big thing everyone knows. Many people probably don't even know it's from this film, but yes, Death is in the film, and he greets him, and he says basically, Antonius's time is up, and then of course Antonius says, he kind of makes a bargain. He says, if I beat you at chess, I can get off of it and stay living, and if not, it's the other way. So of course Death accepts the offer, and of course, basically this is not what I thought it'd be. I thought actually, because I deliberately try not to kind of look into plots and stuff of many films like this, and I actually thought, just looking at the images and stuff, it's mainly going to be, based in this one location, by the sea, where they are playing chess, and then, for not, the whole film, of course, but, playing some chess. There's loads of dialogue between them in this kind of spot, and then, of course, flashbacks. I thought, but still based around, going right back to this place once the flashbacks are kind of over and stuff. And I thought that's probably going to be, what the film's like. Completely different, really. And there's only a few kind of scenes that are very, very short with, Death and, of course, the Knight. So it's very, very interesting. It actually turns into kind of an adventure film. There's this troupe of actors, the Travellers, who kind of eventually, form up with the Knight. And yes, the final act is kind of something very, at times ambiguous, but, kind of, it's a very, very different film to what I thought it'd be, in that sense. And many have cited this as one of the best films ever made. But again, some people, it's kind of a divisive at times. Some people don't like the film. What do I think of the film? What do I actually think of it? I've explained some of the plot, the themes, of course. It's about, spirituality as well, the meaning of life and death. But what do I think about the film? Is this another film, like a Tarkovsky? Of course, I think the first two ones are great, Tarkovsky films, but the rest I didn't like. Is this, like a kind of a Tarkovsky I didn't like or something like that? No. And is it one of the best films ever made? Not quite. I think I'm not, somebody is saying either of them things. I do think it managed to be called great by me. A great film, definitely. I think, yes, it had some flaws for me, but definitely a great film. And you could say I loved the film. So I was very pleased, of course, to kind of to watch this and kind of come out of the film when I did, I pretty much loved most of the film. I'll get to the flaws, of course, but I think it's definitely a masterfully shot film. The music is wonderful, and of course it's very very reminiscent actually of Andrei Rublev, which I also thought was a great film. Definitely flawed again, but great, and it's kind of very similar themes and story actually as well. But I think what's better, maybe Andrei Rublev, but this film is really a great film. It definitely has some flaws, but I think it really really portrays this kind of apocalyptic kind of theme at times. It's really really wonderful in that sense. The opening 20 minutes is pretty much flawless for me, and then of course you get to the 30-minute mark, and it's kind of my main bulk of the the flaws are in this this part of the film. Between that and maybe the 40-minute mark, about 10 minutes of the film, it's kind of this scene where the actors are kind of trying to they're performing basically to the kind of to the community, to the kind of the audience, and this is the stuff that really goes too far. It just breaks tone for me. I thought maybe this film could be pretentious. Some people have said that. I don't think it's really pretentious. I just think it definitely has some bizarre moments. That could be seen that, in that way. But for me, it's just the stuff that goes too far, tonal breaks, and it's too over the top. For me, the acting parts. When they're dressed up and stuff, and of course the singing there, and there's a scene just after that as well where they force from the people to kind of dance on the table. This is really the main flaws of the film are in this segment. So it does knock quite a few marks off, unfortunately, because it's quite a short film. And of course, there's maybe some imperfections here and there, for the rest of the film. But I think I don't actually think it's a pretentious film. Mostly, I think yes, I can understand how some people would think that, but what I got was a very, very lovely experience most of the time. I thought really, really peaceful, kind of very uplifting at times, but again, really, really great exercise in kind of tension and atmosphere. The sense of dread is really, really wonderful. The way it portrays this kind of disease, and of course, just even just the kind of the visuals and the use of music in that sense. The way that it kind of has this really, really dark, kind of edge and this feel. Of course, Death, himself is not. It's not really a kind of. He's basically kind of like a charming character, you could say. At times, it's very, very weird. But he doesn't come across as wholly evil. It's kind of it's quite comforting actually. And the way he kind of the conversations with the knight Antonius are just wonderful. I actually wish that that the film had been more about this. Would have been even better for me because the main flaws of the film are in some of the side characters in that part that I mentioned in the film. But luckily the actual main cast, the main travellers that we see, are actually very very good / great. I think great cast of characters overall. I think I got really invested, especially in the main kind of the family, involving of course Bibi Andersson, who plays one of the characters there. That was really, really wonderful stuff. Actually, some of my favourite parts came from just seeing this. It was just really, really human stuff, and I thought it was just very, very true to life and just really wonderful. This film, of course, actually as well is very dreamlike. Of course, the visuals add to that. And the use of music and stuff. Just the way that Bergman kind of shoots this film is remarkable. There is no flaws, in the framing, in the lighting, of course. Just the overall kind of the way the camera flows is absolutely stunning. Not a single flaw there. The editing as well kind of adds to the trance that puts you in, and just wonderful stuff. I was wowed by the visuals, and of course combine that with the wonderful music, really really emotional music, and of course just mystical feel that it gives. And it does play out like a dream. At times you could say a nightmare, because it portrays, of course, poverty and disease and stuff, really, really, in very dark ways. At times, as I say, in that 15-10 minutes, in the first half, it's maybe a bit heavy-handed. That kind of plays into the kind of the people, when they're over the top and stuff, and it is a bit heavy-handed / over the top and stuff, but. Other than that, it's really wonderfully portrayed throughout the film. I didn't quite get, the ending act. Some of the ending acts, the very last 10 minutes, and and what it kind of meant. You know, I didn't know for sure, but you know, of course, I'll be rewatching this maybe in a month or so. Definitely want to revisit this, and you know, I think it was definitely a great film. You know, I can't give it, you know, 10 out of 10 or anything, 100%, because it did have flaws for me, and of course, yeah, there's just some moments here and there throughout the rest of the film where I didn't quite absolutely adore the film. So it doesn't get, you know, like a full 5 stars, but it does get a great rating, and I think it really is a wonderful work of cinema. You know, it's just the feeling I got from it. It was just very, very kind of tranquil, and definitely spiritual. You know, this film was trying to portray that and the meaning of life, you know, and death. They really done this mostly wonderful. I think you know, I felt a lot from this film. It's very moving at times. You know, I think the performance from Max von Sydow is absolutely stunning. He gives a masterful performance. Bibi Andersson as well. She is great in the film. Really is. Can't wait to see, of course, more of her, especially in the Bergman films. And Sydow. You know, I think the performances mostly are great from our main characters, of course. Death himself, you know, performance, you know, it's just wonderful. It's just, as I say, it's kind of a mix of charming, you know, kind of a charming sort of performance with yes, definitely someone who's very, you know, kind of, you know, it does disturb you at times, but it's not played completely for that. There is humour in the film as well. You know, as I say, some of the over top stuff early on, you know, kind of it does break tone, but really the rest of the film, you know, the places of subtle humour throughout the film really work, adds you know, kind of humanity to it, and just yeah, you know, I think it just makes you for a better experience, more enjoyable, and of course, you know, the way it kind of explores its themes, you know, as I say, is mostly great. It really is something else. The script is stunning. It's very thought provoking. You know, it's just very yeah, it's got a wonderful flow. Yes, at times maybe you can say the characters aren't, you know, kind of giving realistic dialogue. You know, a lot of the time it's more kind of poetic and stuff. It's not, yeah, it's not, you know, Tarkovsky. You know, later films where the characters, you know, in my opinion, no disrespect, but the characters a lot of the time would literally just read off poetry out of books, and it didn't seem like they were actual characters. You know, this is kind of, they do seem like characters. They do have emotion behind it, and the acting and stuff is definitely there for that. But they do sometimes, you know, read you know, kind of like this, and they do kind of say things that, you know, you probably wouldn't really necessarily understand, some people, but you know, it's not done in a way that I feel is pretentious, and actually for me it's never a boring film. You know, it's always very engaging, and just always kind of makes me feel something, most of the dialogue, so it's just a wonderful film overall. Definitely flawed, and you know, some of the stuff, as I say, in that kind of that 10-15 minute mark, I didn't actually like some of that stuff. That's why the mark is a lot lower than kind of what I could have given it. You know, this could have been definitely, you know, rounded up. For example, you know, a 5 stars or a kind of 10 out of 10 film. You know, but I have to be honest. Some of the film, you know, as I say, it was too much in that kind of acting sequence, and it was too heavy-handed, over the top, and kind of just poorly judged at times. You know, but I think definitely overall the experience, you know, is very spiritual. You know, it's wonderfully shot. The direction is just stunning here, and just the use of music, the editing, all this kind of stuff. It's just such a well-made film. And of course, the script itself is really lovely. I think really made me feel a lot, and just some really you know, kind of engaging characters. I feel, you know, not all of them. You know, there is one character that's with them. She's not that great. She's kind of just there in the background. But again, you know, nothing too bad or anything. You know, most of the characters really are definitely engaging. They're well written. The acting is wonderful, and just I think, you know, it has a kind of very unique blend of, you know, kind of uplifting feel, and very disturbing nature. The atmosphere, you know, is very dark at times, and it's just kind of this perfect blend at times. You know, it really just makes it for kind of dreamlike experience, but one that, you know, is very powerful. You know, and of course the ending shots, though, I absolutely adored. This whole kind of this family, you know, the kind of the man and wife, and of course, you know, the little kid they have, it's so wonderfully portrayed. You know, I was wowed by this stuff, and of course the way they kind of form up, you know, around the middle mark of the film, these main characters, it's really great. You know, I think, you know, the blacksmith was another character who did go too far at times early on. You know, the kind of bit too over the top, but eventually, you know, he came into his own, and I did, you know, I was entertained and stuff, and I was compelled by this character. So yes, overall, definitely for me, a great film. So overall, I think I'd have to give this film a 90%. You know, I can't give it higher than that, but you know, this film is great. You know, I think you know, this is a fair score. I've kind of justified it, of course, saying that most of the film was wonderful. It was stunning. You know, it was at times masterful, especially the way it was shot, and just the overall feel, the mood of the film. But because you got kind of a 10, maybe almost 15 minutes, you know, in the film that's just you know, too over the top, heavy-handed, even in its themes there, and just I think that could have been cut out of the film. You know, it really does. It brings the film down by, you know, 10%, obviously. You know, and yes, you know, it does. It stops it from being, you know, a masterpiece, because you know, it was stuff that at times, you know, I didn't really like that much. It was too much, and just it did break the tone. You know, and it could have maybe have been done well, but you know, it just wasn't. On this occasion, I didn't care for that moment, that kind of sequence. So yes, really, other than that, you know, there's a couple of moments here and there, but the rest of the film is really stunning. You know, I can see why this is, you know, ranked among the greatest films. You know, I don't personally agree with that. You know, I don't think it's one of the very best films or anything. You know, I don't even think it's a masterpiece. But you know, a great film definitely. One that I did pretty much love all the way through. You know, I was moved by this. I was kind of, you know, I escaped into this, you know, this kind of fantasy, you know, kind of experience, this dream, you know, and it was kind of what I hoped for, you know, with death at times. It was kind of more playful, and it's, you know, not entirely kind of taken too seriously, you know, not pretentious really at all. This film, it has some odd moments, as I say early on, but you know, just with the humour, it doesn't work, and it's too much. It's too theatrical and too. It just doesn't break. It breaks the tone. It doesn't fit with the rest of the film. But a lot of this film, it's actually quite flawless. I think the way that it's shot is wonderful. The use of music is both beautiful, you know, uplifting, and very, very, you know, haunting. You know, it really does have that kind of that feel within the music, and of course the performances. You know, while some aren't great, the main cast, you know, the film, the ones that really count, Max von Sydow, Bibi Andersson, of course, you know, there's a couple of other characters in the film. The performances are stunning, and of course it really moved me, uplifted me, it made me laugh at times, and yes, you know, it's just a very, very unique film. So yes, of course, thanks for watching, you know, this review, and yes, Bergman films, you know, I think they're getting more availability, you know, over the last few years, you know, but until now, you know, a lot of his films, let's face it, have not really been too you know, kind of easy to get hold of, but of course, I will try and amass, you know, as much as I can, you know, and so I can review most of his films, you know, his main films, and you know, I really look forward to, of course, Wild Strawberries. Kind of a bit split on, you know, my thoughts on approaching Persona, you know, but hopefully I think it's a great film, you know, and many other ones, of course, Autumn Sonata, you know, Fallon and Alexander, that one looks like it could be something I really like, and yeah, you know, I think it looks really, really interesting to, you know, explore this guy's work. You know, the first film I watched, of course, a great film. Really, really like this one, of course. So I really look forward to the rest of the, you know, of his work. And yes, thanks for watching my review.